US has banned Russian aircrafts from the US airspace as Western countries slam Russia for its offensive against Ukraine. Now, US President Joe Biden has announced that the US is following Canada and the European Union in banning the Russian planes. Biden also slammed Russian President Vladimir Putin in the State Union address, saying that when dictators do not pay for their aggression, it causes utter chaos.
The United States Department of Justice is assembling a dedicated task force to go after the crimes of the Russian oligarchs. We're joining with European allies to find and seize their yachts, their luxury apartments, their private jets. We're coming for your ill-begotten gains. And tonight, I'm announcing that we will join our allies in closing off American airspace to all Russian flights, further isolating Russia and adding additional squeeze on their economy.
And I'm now joined on the broadcast by Captain S.S. Panesar, who's an aviation expert also, and also by Mr. Suresh Kumar Goyal, who's a former ambassador. Now, thank you so much, Mr. Kumar, and also Mr. Panesar, Captain Panesar, for joining me on the broadcast. A very important discussion that we are all set to actually, have on the broadcast, as the US, in fact, is now all set to ban Russian flights from its airspace. A very unprecedented step. Never before has this been done by the United States of America. That's how important this particular development is. Captain Panesar, I'd like to start with you if you can just put through your opening address when it comes to this particular development.
Well, at the outset, I must appreciate the stand of our Honorable PM to monitor the extradition of our Indian students and Indian citizens from the country of Ukraine. And he's posted a few honorable ministers there. And it's a very big thing and a sad incident regarding this war and all that. And the only person, according to me, who can stop the war is Mr. Putin. He's only responsible for starting, and he can only stop the war. And all world countries should take part and insisting on Mr. Putin to stop the war before it causes millions of casualties all over the world. And it can be amicably discussed in the United States UN Assembly. Why discuss with the war and kill innocent people? And our Honorable Minister, Shri Hardeep Singh Puri, he is a very experienced person. He has been monitoring the Vande Bharat flights during the COVID war. Now he is gone there. He should be posted in the city of Kyiv to monitor how much losses have been incurred by the government of Ukraine. And he can brief our Honorable PM for further action of intervention, and maybe our Honorable Prime Minister can interact with the President of USSR, Mr. Putin. And it is high time the world countries should get together and please insist on the Putin to stop the casualty on the poor people living in that country. Things can be discussed around the table instead of damaging the properties and buildings and the lives of innocent people. We are grateful, and our Honorable PM, he started
Absolutely. Captain Panesar, thank you so much for bringing to notice, these particular developments that are really taking place. And this is an important development that we have to talk about. But today, importantly, we are discussing the growing number of sanctions against Russia and the kind of a possible retaliation that we might expect from Vladimir Putin also. Mr. Kumar, I'd want you to actually come in here. Let's talk about the sanctions and also especially this airspace closure when it comes to the United States of America that it has done, and it has followed EU and of course Canada to close its airspace for Russian aircrafts. This is a big development coming in.
Frankly speaking, the USA being an Atlantic country, I am not quite sure how the ban or closing of the US airspace to Russian Federation, how much is that going to impact on the Russian economy? One has to basically look at the analysis in terms of how much of trade from Russia is conducted through the flights. My own sense would be that it will be the cross-Atlantic traffic, the maritime which will be more important in that sense for the economy rather than the airspace. Coming to the other parts of the sanctions, I think there are sanctions from Europe which will be of a more direct impact on Russia, because that will impact not only on the movement of people, but also state, like closing the excluding Russian banks from SWIFT transactions, financial transactions, banning on the purchase of energy from Russia. All those will have a long-term impact. However, what we need to also see is that nowadays these linkages are not just one way. Russian economy will definitely be impacted, but there would be a corresponding impact also on the European economy and the American economy. So we need to see how long can the world sustain these sanctions. My own sense would be that in this case, Russia is prepared to go a long way. And in Chinese, there is a saying, "Qiuhu," that means we can eat bitter fruit to sustain ourselves. The national dignity more. And Russia does feel that their national dignity has been impacted. And I think they're prepared to go a long way in terms of suffering from the sanctions. So I don't see the sanctions impacting.
Right, Mr. Goel, you are making again very, very important points, and in fact, I want to bring in Captain Panesar here also. The fact that Mr. Goel there has raised a very important point here, Captain Panesar, how this in turn will also impact US and other countries, including India, because we are looking at these massive sanctions, a closure of the airspace, which has never been done before by the United States of America, an unprecedented step. Do you think Russia would not be retaliating? And if that happens, how will it impact US and then later in turn India?
Well, I personally feel it's not a good decision for the Russian president to attack the country and cause damage to the poor people. And it's a good decision by the Ukraine government to stop the overflying before it causes any damages to airlines flying over and near that country. Earlier, there have been a few blasts of Malaysian airlines which are flying closer to the Russian border, and it was shot down and killing all the passengers. So it's a good decision to stop overflying over these countries in this situation of war. And I personally feel, beside economy, which is going to suffer very badly, not only in India, Russia, Ukraine, or any other country in the world, but the damage caused to the property and persons, which is very serious. It's high time, I'm sure the NATO and US government will stand up to the occasion to interact with the President Putin to stop this war and casualties and all that. This will be a great deal done by the countries who intervene at this stage.
Absolutely. Also, Mr. Suresh Kumar Goel, I'd like you to bring in here, come in here, because there's again one point that you made which I'd like to actually discuss further and deliberate further, which is about Russia really trying to buffer through and cushion itself in the wake of these sanctions. We also know that right now Russia has gone ahead, limited foreign currency withdrawal to about $10,000 for its citizens. This is in the wake of the sanctions that have been levied against Russia. So do you think these are the steps that Russia is also undertaking, trying its best to skirt over these sanctions, and this in turn will have a very, very detrimental impact on the global economy?
There are two or three factors here. First of all, there are in fact two long-term impacts that I can see here from the sanctions. One is the trade, the capacity to really buffer up its own foreign currency stocks and be able to trade its oil and gas. From all that I know, China continues to buy oil, gas, coal from Russia, continues to trade with Russia for different things. China has already told the USA that these sanctions are not acceptable to it. And China is one of the huge trading partners from Russia. Therefore, the impact on the Russian economy will be limited to that extent. That is number one. Number two is really the closing of the Russian financial system, or delinking the Russian financial system from the international systems, really, which will limit the transfer of amount, which will limit Russia being able to withdraw on the reserves that it has kept in the various banks. Most of the countries, like even in the case of India, our reserves are not kept in the Indian banks. They're mostly in the bonds and securities, either in the USA or in UK, Europe, other places. So in that sense, even the foreign exchange reserves that Russia has will be impacted by these sanctions. That will be a more long-term impact, and therefore Russia will need to limit the outflow of currency from Russia. If you recall that besides permitting only a limited amount of foreign exchange withdrawal by the Russian citizens, Russia has also banned the cashing in of securities held by the foreign companies in Russia. So these are all the steps Russia will take. And lastly, a country which is determined to weather it through does it. Please recall that India was also subjected to all kinds of sanctions in the view of 1998 nuclear tests, and before that in 1974. We came through that. And Russia has a much larger capacity because of its defense trade that it will come through. So I don't really think they will face difficulty, but they're not going to basically buckle down. Yes.
All right, Mr. Goel and Captain Panesar, I'd like you to also talk about the peace talks, which are all set to happen. And this is in the wake of fresh bombings and these visuals that we continue to show our viewers on our screens there. Those are also what the ground reality currently is. And in the wake of that, there is this peace talk, even as the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has in fact asked Russia to stand down, to actually bat for peace, and then only any kind of peace talks formally can really take place on ground. What are your expectations from these talks that are set to take place?
Who goes first, I or Captain Paliskar?
Mr. Goel, you can go ahead. Please start.
I would like to hear the last word. Even if the citizens of Russia will not be in favor of the President Putin to attack the country and cause damages to the property and human life, I'm sure none of the citizens of Russia would be taking the side of the Putin for this attack, where he's trying to test his equipment, power of equipment he has got with them.
Last few minutes.
Mr. Goel?
These are not peace talks. These are talks between two countries at war to see how to stop the war. And stopping of the war is not peace. Therefore, what I'm seeing here is that while the war continues, both the countries will come with their positions across the table to see how to stop the war, and they will be presenting their maximum and minimum positions. This will continue. This is not going to, I think there'll be third round, fourth round, at least 3 or 4 more rounds. Peace will come only after Europe has they've developed a revised security architecture in Europe, which crumbled up in 1991. I think my time, 2 minutes are up. I'll stop here.
Also, Captain Panesar, I'd want you to come in here. So much has been said about the Indian evacuation efforts. More and more students who were stranded in Ukraine are beginning to come back to the country, which is a very, very relieving sight. However, over 15,000 people who are Indians still remain stranded in Ukraine. Now, the government, the opposition are actually warring, and they are calling that the evacuation process is much delayed. What is your say in this?
See, better late than never. And our honorable ministers who are being posted there for discussion and all that, they should use all the efforts, means and all that to protect Indians and take them out of that country, the neighboring countries, or bring them back to India as early as possible before damages to their property and their human lives is caused. It's a good decision, although it's a late decision, but anyway, our government has still taken a very good decision to evacuate them immediately. We appreciate the stand of our government. Now they posted the honorable ministers also. The foreign secretary also, he can
There seems to be
negotiate with
some
them
problem
all.
with that audio link of Captain Panesar. Mr. Goel, I'll just take it to you now. We saw some unprecedented scenes also from the UN Assembly. When the Foreign Minister of Russia got down to speaking, there was a walkout that was staged. So those were very, very dramatic visuals. However, it said a lot. But do you think it has only gotten reduced to optics when it comes to the Western countries, US and its allies? Nothing much has been done on the ground as far as Ukraine is concerned for Ukraine?
I think you have got your finger on the spot here. And the capacity of the Western nations to do anything beyond optics, as well as supplying material needs, defense, as said, defense products. NATO has already taken a decision not to engage militarily in Ukraine, besides supplying the material. And I think that is what is going to continue. Besides the optics, the real war at the moment will be fought by the Ukrainian personnel, and how they will be able to use the material support with with their personnel being limited in the manner that it is now. I don't know. So let us see. Yes, I finished.
All right. Thank you so much, Captain Panesar, and also Mr. Suresh Kumar Goel, for joining me on this important discussion here on the broadcast. Remember, we are also talking about the unprecedented development that has come in from US, where US, in fact, has ended up banning its airspace for Russia completely. This is in the wake of further steps that are to do with sanctions against Moscow. And now what has happened is that after Canada and the European Union, US too, never before this has been done, US too has banned its airspace for Russian flights.